In the world of animation, you might hear the term pipeline used often. Now, if you're someone like me that's a little bit newer to this world, you might be a little confused as to what it means. And that's what I want to discuss today. In very short and simple terms, it means your workflow, your process. Now, that's a little bit too surface, but what it means is how you're going to bring the animation to life. More specifically, who's the animation team that you're working with, and what is your overall process of working with them. And the reason why this is important is because in order to have good animation, you want to have this really buttoned up. You want to have a sense of camaraderie with your animation team. No different than in live action, right? Directors often work with the same cinematographers, the production designers, editors, producers, sometimes actors, all these different things, right? They build up a rapport, they build up a relationship where they can start to talk shorthand and things like that. And this is important because I think, in the world of animation, oftentimes from an executive level, you just think of like, okay, we have the creatives and things like that. We'll just hire any old animation company and whatever, they'll bring the results. But the thing of it is, while all animation studios can be wonderful, and they are wonderful, some animation studios do certain things better versus others, right? So you have to know that side of it, right? Are they great at backgrounds? Are they great at action scenes? Like, are they, great at 2D and what type of 2D, or 3D and what type of 3D, all these different things. And even then, more so, it's about, okay, they have to understand the project too. They're not just robots that you just like, hey, here's the script and go and make it. You want to really, talk with them about the project in of itself. And the more that they can understand it, the more that they can bring to it, right? That's why for me, as I continue to develop my animated feature film, there's been the talk of like, okay, we know that we need more animators for when we make the feature film beyond what we just currently have. But, who do we bring on? And some people are like, well, would you be okay with replacing, your current animation team? And beyond just the loyalty aspect, it's like, no, I don't, because with this animation team, I've been talking with them for 3 years, and we've done this proof of concept at this point. We've done various character designs. So we've started developing that there's a 3-year knowledge base that we've developed that I would have to then develop with somebody else, right? And of course, as I said, we're going to need more people, but, having that foundation is integral. And I think one of the things just in general of movies that I hear more and more, and certainly there's a wonderful podcast called Team Deakins, which is hosted by Roger Deakins and his partner James Deakins. Roger Deakins being like just a world-class cinematographer, has done Sicario, Blade Runner, 2049, the Sam Mendes movie, 1917, I think it's called, right? The single shot. He's worked with Coen brothers on many films, but No Country for Old Men, right? The list goes on and on. He's a phenomenal, like, world-renowned cinematographer. The point being that they host a podcast, they interview all top-notch people in various fields, if you will, production designers, editors, producers, cinematographers, directors, writers, and so on and so forth. And a common theme that all of them tend to share is that pre-production, that window shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And that's not good, right? And that's why I'm talking about the relevance of having an animation pipeline, having your players in place, because as these windows shrink, both in live action and animation, of turnaround time and stuff like that, having people that understand your sensibilities, excuse me, that you can talk the shorthand with is invaluable, right? That's why, I hold on to dear life for the animators that I've worked with because, as I said, we have that 3-year history together. You can't just replicate that overnight. That doesn't just happen. And so this is the importance of an animation pipeline, and this is what we're talking about, right? Having the players in place. Now, to kind of go off tangentially with all this, a lot of people ask me, well, how did you get your animation team? Well, animation's been something that I've been interested in for many, many years as a fan, first and foremost, right? I grew up watching cartoons, and they meant a lot to me, whether it was like Hey Arnold or Recess. And then, as you grow older, a lot of people will say like, oh, animation's like this pejorative, right? Like animation's for kids. But, part of me, like, I never left that, right? Like I always still liked Pokemon and stuff like that. But even beyond that, through video games such as like the Final Fantasy series and stuff like that, I saw, while that's not outright animation, it's telling a story through computer graphics, and then, with Pixar doing what they did, even though a lot of their movies obviously appeal to kids, there's a level that adults can also enjoy those movies on, right? And so you start to see like animation is just a medium rather than this thing that has to be only for kids. Anyway, the point being that I've always had a love for it and wanted to do something with that. And so, for years and years, I wasn't like ready to dive in, but, I would like speak to various animation companies. Like I would cold call them and just be like, hey, like, I'd love to learn more. And, people were gracious enough to like give me 15 minutes to like answer questions. And one of my early entry points was through rotoscoping. I loved whether Waking Life or Scanner Darkly from Richard Linklater. And then when Amazon's Undone came out, I was just taken away, and I figured that could be my sort of entry point into it. And part of the appeal is that, with animation, you can make the fantastical real because it all looks the same, right? There's no distinction between the real life people and the CGI that you have to create in order to try to like sell the realism of it. So that was always a big appeal. But anyway, I'd done these various shorts and little tests of animation on my own, of like with the rotoscoping and, working with like various people. And then by this process, I met someone through Upwork that knows a lot of animators in the Philippines. And we did like a little 8-second thing together. And, that turned out successfully. And so I just kept that conversation going and essentially was like, what would it take to make a feature film? How would that look like? And, we just started working together, and, now here we are 3 years down the line of having worked together. And, especially for me, the proof of concept that we did for this movie was obviously by design something that we could use to pitch the movie, but also the byproduct was so we can all learn to work together. I could learn, in a kind of more succinct way what the animation process looks like from start to finish. They could know what it's like to work with me, what this project will entail, in terms of character designs, backgrounds, how we even just simplistically, how we deliver notes to each other, and what works and what doesn't, and all these different things. So that's a part of what I do recommend is, in general, I love figuring out ways to work together to get to know each other in smaller forms, right? One of the ways I even hire people is, if there's like 3 really good candidates, it's tough to like just make a choice, and you don't really know someone until you work with them. And so what I like to do is in this scenario, each of the 3 candidates essentially the same task. I'll pay him for it, so it does cost a little bit, but like what's the smallest, quickest iteration of it? And then each of them brings me back, and I start to know like, whose results do I like? Do I like working with them? what's their personality like, all these different things you start to see. And so then you know you can, that you've made the right decision because you've gone through this process. So I say all that because when we talk about an animation pipeline, these are the steps, these are strategies that I've employed to do that, right? Even before I knew what an animation pipeline was by its definition, I had this, intrinsic instinct to, okay, let's do it this way, and this is the way that it makes sense to me. So, I just wanted to kind of highlight, the importance of an animation pipeline, as well as highlight how you can foster that relationship. But as always, if you have any questions or thoughts of your own, please comment down below or hit me up on social media. I'd love to continue the conversation. So yeah, thank you so much, as always, and I hope to see you next time.